Hi friends, I'm Sterling Hart and this is Dreamlight, where we work with dream interpretation and using the insights in the waking life. This is part 4 of Murder in Dreams. In this video we will examine murder weapons, and then look at the subliminal dreams dealing with murder. Murder weapons are usually about the kind of death they create. Murders can be executions or crimes of passion, distant or close-up and personal, precise or indiscriminate. Murder weapons may not be known in the dream, but sometimes it is interesting to ask what weapon you think was used in the dream. Sometimes the weapon is the main feature. When interpreting dreams, it's often good to allow your imagination to fill in gaps. You don't want to do that when writing the dream down initially or in your initial recount of the dreams, but later in a more controlled environment, it's good to look at those issues. Such things as what would it look like from another person's point of view, or in this case, what weapon would you have used? Blood loss due to a weapon is loss of life force, emotion, vitality, enthusiasm, or passion. Loss of breath is often about expression. Impact death, such as a blow from a weapon, is the reaction to some event. Guns are decisive and show intent, as they have to be aimed. The type of gun is important. A handgun shows expression and control. A rifle is more distant and has a calculating aspect. A shotgun is more emotional. How they are aimed can be significant, and how the weapon is held. Raising a handgun and pointing it downward would indicate a need to dominate. The distance can be revealing. Usually these represent fear, anger, and power. People's personal association will vary widely with guns. Anyone can use one. The type or size of the gun will have different associations if the type is known in the dream, and there may be other elements, such as the access to firearms. Loading or unloading may indicate a period of gestation or thinking before the gun is used, and in a dream that would symbolize that there's some sort of working through the material or the waking cause for the symbols in the dream. Causing a fatal accident, being pushed off a cliff or in front of traffic or thrown under a bus, grabbing the wheel of a car, this would indicate some pressure, getting you out of the way. Sabotage is where they cut your brake lines or cause some mishap. One, it is indirect, but it takes planning, and the person is usually far from the crime. There can be a sense of stealth or being able to get away with it. Also, this can carry the notion of self-sabotage. Suffocation by strangulation, choking, or putting a pillow over your head would indicate the loss of the life force, joy, enthusiasm, or the killing of a voice. A pillow can indicate intimacy or caring. Using a garrote is more hateful. There is a notion of being stifled and unable to breathe, not being allowed to speak, denial, being choked off, unable to complete something or give voice to it. There can be a rejection of some sort of thought, feeling, or action. Blades indicate precision, discrimination, and it's usually a mental symbol. You die through blood loss of life. Slitting a throat can indicate self-sabotage or a need to stop some thought. A sneak attack can be an unexpected experience or a sudden new awareness, realization, idea, or feeling that penetrated or cut through things. Also being stabbed in the back and betrayed. Knives can be vicious. Cutting is more precise, and stabbing is more passionate. Poison would indicate that something in your life is destructive, a thought or a desire. This can also be related to other people being jealous or manipulating, like a narcissist that poisons the opinion of others around you. Bludgeons, hammers, baseball bats, anger, and fear aim to quash something, hit it, and make it stop abruptly. It indicates a need to dominate, especially striking from the top down. There can also be a sense of blacking out and being overwhelmed. It can symbolize an event that made an impact or something that you or someone else said or did. Bombs are social. Explosions happen quickly. They are also distant and indiscriminate. It takes special knowledge and planning. Starvation, denial to access something or trying to slowly stop a voice, desire, or activity. Having some activity that you don't gain from. So you either don't gain emotionally or financially. It's something where you're doing it, but it's slowly killing you. Electrocution depends on whether it is a chair or like throwing something in your bath. This can mean a panic or a trauma. Vehicles are a symbol unto themselves, the things that get you through life, like a relationship or work, and your control of your destination and path. So sometimes someone else's path gets in your way. Sometimes your own path kills other opportunities. Finding the murder weapon can indicate a growing awareness of the problem. Not finding the weapon may suggest that the situation is unclear or the method is not essential. You're more concerned with the acceptance or consequences of the change. Subliminal dreams, or subliminal elements in dreams, can touch on a much vaster consciousness underneath the subconscious. They can be prescient and show you things before they happen, or reveal things at a distance that are hidden. They are often symbolic rather than accurate descriptions. They can be mixed in with psychological dreams. They often show your reactions or what you will become due to an experience that will unfold in your life. They are usually vivid, clearly organized, and carry a sense of being special or important. So I know two involving murder. The first was a friend who dreamed that he was walking home. The street didn't look like any he had seen before, and as he arrived at his house, which he didn't see in the dream, he looked down the street and couldn't see anything. It was completely black, even though there were streetlights. In the dream, he knew below the street there was something absorbing all the light, and he knew it was evil. That feeling returned for days afterwards, when he was awake, and he looked down one side of the road near his house. He had the dream at the beginning of the week, and towards the end it was discovered that a neighbor who rented a room in a house had been murdered several days earlier, the night of the dream. The case was never solved. Nothing in the dream was predictive of the murder or gave any details. He never met the victim, but it did connect him to the event with a subtle awareness. The second one was one of mine. I dreamed about a stairwell area, and I could overhear people arguing in a rage, and there was this burning smell. I saw a guy on the landing throwing a 40mm shell, like for a grenade launcher, against the wall as hard as possible and then catching it. This happened several times, and then he ran down the stairs. Then I looked out the window, saw a skyline filled with thick black smoke, and felt a wave of despair, and I kept walking. This was on the day of a mass shooting at the university where I was a student. This had several layers. One was the feeling of walking around the campus during the morning and early afternoon. It was bitterly cold, and several people remarked on this. A significant winter storm was bearing down later that evening, but it felt bitter in a way I had never felt before. It seemed foreboding. Nothing in the dream was actionable, but the feelings were connected, and at the time I knew something was up, but not what it was. The smoke in the sky I related to a course I had had on the poetry of the Holocaust by survivors and witnesses. The walking was moving on. I walked a lot on campus usually, and I would read and then process my studies by walking and thinking them through. In the aftermath of the shooting, I made a conscious effort to make sure I spent time keeping up on my routine. I've heard many stories from people describing how they had an inner sense that allowed them to avoid mishaps. This is connected to the same subliminal elements of the self as in the dream. What seems to be different is that in dreams there is more of an emphasis on how the self is changing and the forces of our mind at play. So foreknowledge is usually about ourselves as played out in events. It will show us what we will become or have a symbolic connection to our sense of self. Whereas in the waking time, the subliminal will give us more of a link to the actual events. We will see what is happening and how it came to be rather than how it shapes us. We will have more of a chance to avoid a situation. Anger can be reflected in subliminal dreams. If we are projecting our anger towards something or someone, that energy has to go somewhere. If it doesn't find a receptive situation, it will keep trying and often return to us. This is like manifesting things in your life. You can have a sense from the subliminal in the waking life of what you need to do, what you must work through, the kinds of experiences you need to have, what needs to come to you, or the opportunities that are necessary for you to grow and make progress in life. This is not to be confused with the ego and desires for things we want, nor the subconscious conditioning of what we think we should have or how to be. Sometimes these things are in alignment, but sometimes we have to make a radical break. Things like anger and jealousy return to us in ways that allow us to learn to get through them. Dreams will often show us these things and allow us to grow. With subconscious psychological dreams, we can work with our patterns, reactions, memories, and associations. With subliminal dreams, we can often find what we need and have the wisdom to recognize it and act on it. Some connections appear and allow us to move in new directions by showing us what we must become or what must fall away. For example, my friend had a dream where he was at a large warehouse. There were stacked boxes and pallets, cans and other things so high you couldn't see around them. So you could look up and see how big the room was with the high ceilings, but you were constantly moving through a maze of narrow spaces. Several times in the dream, he encountered a tall, thin man with a gray afro, who he knew was trying to kill him. He would meet him and exchange words and then go somewhere and come back. Each exchange was somewhat different. In the first one, the man was helpful. The second time, he was condescending. The third time, he was trying not to seem like a stalker. On waking, the feeling that the man was trying to kill him was very vivid. The sense of hardness and tightness, stress and fear and violence. Upon working with the dream, the man reminded him of someone he knew from a health food store. He was always very knowledgeable about his products, and he would talk long explaining things. He also reminded him of a retired coach that lived down the street. The coach would be very controlling. He would say something, then backtrack, saying he was kidding or joking about it, so he controlled the conversation. And you never knew what was real with him. He liked the coach because the coach forced him to practice keeping his own direction and sense of self, while the guy tried to control everything. The coach was also very charismatic and funny. This brought up two things. The first was anger at the health food guy because he sold a dangerous product to more than one person. He gave the example of a supplement that was supposed to increase bone density, but worked because it tricked the standard testing methods. He thought the health food guy was aiming to sell products and accepting the promotional campaigns at face value, so he really wasn't angry at him personally. So his anger was rooted in this illusionary world of health products, some good but some bad, and often more about promises than substance. The dreamer was always very science-oriented. In the waking time, he had been angry about political things. The news had made him mad, so he realized that he was angry and that indulging in the emotion was setting a trap for himself. Sometimes something would trigger his anger and get the brunt of it when the anger itself was at the news. He realized a separation. One was his mind's habits, and the other was the world created in his mind by the news. The dreamer encountered both people in the grocery store later that day as if by chance. He thought his anger and fear were being shown to him by being confronted by the two individuals. One, who he thought of as deluded as himself, and the other who was manipulative. He realized he needed to practice keeping his sense of calm, happiness, and direction in the face of things that tried to draw him in and kill or make him lose himself. The wider subliminal consciousness showed the forces around him that he was drawing and gave him a context by which he could see more clearly why and how his life was unfolding. If you got something out of this video, please hit the like. If you want more dreams, subscribe or consider supporting the channel on Patreon with the link below. Till next time.